Hello and welcome to Fast 15 Google Forms Introduction. My name is Melissa Garner and I work for the IT office for the Oregon Department of Education. And today I will be your tour guide for Google Forms. We have Garrett from HR here to answer or to handle the questions that come up. So if you have questions along the way, would you please use the questions feature in GoToWebinar to ask those questions, and I will address those questions at the end of our time together. So if you would go ahead and get into your Drive window that hopefully you have open at this point, and get in a spot in your Drive that you don't care if you create something that is not something you'll hang on to permanently. I keep a folder called One-Time Use that I use specifically for that purpose in my Drive. And go to New, More, Google Forms. This starts a new blank form for you and allows you to edit what you need to edit. If I click here where it says Untitled Form and give it a title, and then click up here where it says Untitled Form, it renames the form with the same title I gave it here. In this form description box, I could type in all kinds of things that have that are about this form. So for instance, what's the purpose of the information we're collecting? What's the program that it's associated with? The limitation that Google Forms will put for you right here is that you can't do named links. So you can't do links that the links will all show what I call naked links. There's a Fast 15 that's going to get rescheduled on that if you are confused about how to do that in every other place, but it doesn't work in Google Forms. If I go down into the question bank, it gives me one multiple choice question by default. But if I change that to name, I want you to notice that it changed to a short answer, because typically if you're going to ask people for their name, you're not going to put it in a list and have them choose. If I choose, though, I'm like, for instance, creating a form for just the people on my team, I can change it back to multiple choice and then enter options here. So by selecting a new line, I can give a new response, and I can add other to any multiple choice question. That would then prompt the person who's filling out the form to add something into that space. Down here, you'll notice that my required slide is turned to on. That means that anyone completing this form would not be able to do so unless, not be able to submit unless they fill in this form and select an answer. To start a new question, I click here, and it will assume by default that I want a multiple choice. But again, if I type in date, it's going to come in and actually give me a date format. I'm going to go ahead and leave that required. And now I'm going to choose an actual question that would be multiple choice. And you notice that Google helpfully adds all these options. And I'm going to say add all, and you'll notice that yes, no, and maybe now are the options that I give people. I can go in and say, and change an answer that Google gave me, but it is helpful and gives me things right away. You can also add in a title and description. So that would add a second title and description, a photo, a YouTube video, or a section. And sections are something that we're not going to cover in this, although that is a functionality in Google Form I want to point out. Let's go and tackle the buttons up here at the top of the screen. So this Customize Theme button allows me to change the color of the form. And if I select something, you'll notice that it's immediately reflected over here on the editing part of my screen. If I choose an image, Google gives me several really great images. This is Work in School, so I usually find most of my themes here. If I choose this yarn theme and then select, give it a moment, and it adds this yarn up here as my theme, and it selects these appropriate colors as things that I might use. So I'm going to change this, and it's going to change, I can change the background, so now it's got a darker background. You notice that it pulled that color from probably right about here. I can, when I'm done making changes to my theme, I can close that window by choosing X. We're going to skip this link because it comes last, and go into settings. Perhaps the most important thing that I can tell you right now is that for every form you create by using your Oregon Learning account, you need to uncheck this box. Restrict users to the Oregon Department of Education and trusted domains. If you leave that box checked, no one who is not logged into Chrome with their Oregon Learning account will be able to fill out this form. That is an important thing to uncheck. If I check collect email address, then it's going to use the email address that the person used to sign into Chrome as the email address that they are using. I typically leave that off and allow people to choose their own email address and enter and create that as a question on my form. If I choose edit after submit, I have to have a login, or someone needs to be logged into Google in order to do that. Most often, that's not something that I would choose. Similarly, see summary of charts and text responses allows every person who participates in using the form to see the answers of every other person who has submitted a form. Again, that's not something I turn on very often. However, in some occasions, that would be appropriate. If I go next to the presentation tab, this allows me to show a link to submit another response. So for instance, if I am having someone fill out a form repeatedly, this is something I would want turned on, because then it allows them to click that link, go back to the start of the form, and fill it out again. You'll also want to make sure that your confirmation message is much more friendly than your response has been recorded in most cases. So in here, I can type in anything that I want. Let's say so this is where I can customize the message to say anything that I want. Oftentimes, especially when sending out questions to the field, I like to give them a picture of what's coming next with that form, or with the information that I've just collected in that form. We would not use quizzes in almost any circumstances here at the department. This allows you to select a correct answer for your questions, your multiple choice questions. I want to be sure and save at the end to save the choices that I've just made. Once you've all done with your form, once you've got all the questions in here, your questions are set, you have entered in all the settings that need to be changed, and you're ready to go, this button right here is your next best friend. Click the preview button to show what your form will look like to everyone who is coming, or to everyone who is responding, or if you're coming to lunch, in fact. This link right here is the link you would send to participants. If you send them this link, it will bring up a window that asks them for permission to collaborate on this form. That's not what you want people to do. You want people to respond to your form. So again, you use this eyeball link to come here and grab the link at the top of this window to send out the form. Let me go back to the editing screen. And again, this is something you'll want to do when you're all the way done with your form. If you do this next step before you're done and come back and make changes, it messes up the spreadsheet at the end. So you'll really want to be done creating your form before you go here. So if I go to responses, this is where I can turn off whether this form is accepting responses or not, that would block people from entering new responses if the form is completely closed or that the data collection that you're doing is no longer appropriate. This button right here creates a new spreadsheet and follows the naming convention that you used for your form and gives you a new form. If I go back here, refresh this, now I have this. I have the spreadsheet. And you'll notice that I get timestamp by default with every form that I create. I also get the names of the field here. I don't see the options that I gave people. So under here, I would not see the options. I would just see the values that they gave in response to the prompt that I gave them on this form. So again, name your title or name your form here. Click here and it will rename your form. Enter a description. Complete all the questions that you want to do in your form. Make sure your theme is customized so it looks beautiful. Check in with settings on the first two tabs in settings to make sure that all of those things are set like you want them to. And then use the eyeball link to get the link that you send to participants. And in those steps, you will successfully create a form. Thank you for coming today and hope to see you at our next Fast 15.